Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is Sandy. It is August 1st. Cannot believe it's August 1st already. And it's Project SmartSprout time. We're talking today about creating a written fundraising plan. Let me get over to the right page here. Okay, before we go too far, let's do a tech check. If you will let me know if you can hear okay, and if you can see the slide, it says creating a written fundraising plan. Just type into the question box and let me know that all is well, that you can see and hear, and that will be fantastic. Just want to do that quick check before we get too far into this. All right, thank you so much. Hey, Joanne. Good to see you here. All right, let's dive in. I have a ton of information for you today. If you didn't grab the handouts, and there are some, you can get those on your dashboard. There should be a tab for handouts. You can click there and download that PDF. It's right there. If you have a question as we go today, please feel free to type that in the question box. I'll be keeping my eye on it. If you're listening to the recording and you have a question, hop on in to the Facebook group and ask your question there. That is always open. Alrighty, I am going to jump in because I have a ton to cover and it will zoom by so fast. I just did this session last week at a conference, this exact same session, and man, it went fast. Oh, it was a fun conference, and it was a packed house. It had about 160 people in the room. It was fun. We're going to be talking about how to put a written fundraising plan together to fuel your success, because the problem is, even though you need a lot of money, if you don't have a plan, if you're shooting from the hip, or if your plan is on a series of sticky notes and you have a ton of paper on your desk, that is going to be very difficult to manage, because you're not going to necessarily be able to plan far enough ahead into the future to simplify the process and to manage it well. We all know what it feels like when you're doing things at the last minute, which is not my favorite position to be in. But when you're doing things at the last minute, it's stressful, it's chaotic, it's very difficult to do your best work at the last minute. And so having a plan solves a lot of those issues. We're going to talk about several things today around a plan, and I'm going to show you about 6 steps that are going to make planning actually fairly easy for you. So let's jump on in. Now, I'm going to assume with my plan today that we are moving toward a fundraising goal of $100,000. If you need more money than that, you're going to scale this up. If you need less money than that, you can scale it down. But either way, this is going to work. I choose 100,000 because I know that a lot of the folks in SmartSprout have budgets less than that, and a nice even number makes the math easy. And yes, we're going to do math in a little bit, so just buckle up, know that it's coming, get your calculator ready. You're going to do a little math. Now, you've probably seen this before. I start a lot of sessions with this. When you raise more money, you can change more lives, and that's really what we're here for, is to be about life-changing work. Money solves a lot of problems around programs and hiring staff and having supplies and all that kind of stuff. When you raise more money, you can change more lives. Working from a plan makes fundraising easier. It's all easier when you know what's coming next. In a lot of ways, it's like having a map. You wouldn't jump in your car and set out for the opposite coast if you didn't know exactly how to get there. I mean, there's so many wrong turns you could make. There's so much time you could waste, so many back roads you could get on. It might be a little frightening. It's so much easier if you had a map. If you GPSed it, if you put it in your GPS, you know exactly which turns to make. You can get there fast, safe, and it can be fun. And you can plan the stops that you want to make instead of those unexpected uh-oh kind of stops. It's the same thing with the plan. Your fundraising plan is going to make everything easier. It's going to give you focus so that you know exactly what you should be doing next. Your productivity is going to increase because you're probably only going to be doing the things that are generating a good return on your investment. When you don't have a plan, it's really easy to chase money, which means you're doing pretty much anything that comes along because it looks like you can raise a little money. When you have a plan, you're going to feel more confident. And let me tell you, that's amazing, just all in itself, to be able to feel really confident about what you're doing. And you're going to be able to leverage your resources better. What do I mean by that? When you have a plan, you know exactly when you're going to need volunteers. You know when you're going to need sponsors well ahead of time so that you can talk to people and leverage relationships. It's just going to give you the ability to do more with what you already have when you have a plan. These are some of my favorite things. Without a plan, you're like this guy on this hamster wheel. You're going to work really, really, really hard, and you're probably not going to get very far very fast. So my goal today is to get you started on your fundraising plan so that you're not in that state of chaos and stress and overwhelm and confusion. I want you to be in a place where you are, you're confident, you know what's coming next, and it's so much easier to handle all of it. Now, if you have your handouts, this is on, I think it's on page 3. It's one of the first pages. There's actually a flow chart that shows you this. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you these 6 steps. We're going to talk about them real quick here, and then I'm going to spend most of the rest of the time digging into each one of these steps to show you exactly what you need to know about each one. So have your pen and paper ready. Be ready to take some notes here because I've got a lot of really good stuff to share with you. Here are the 6 steps to a fundraising plan. I have figured this out myself. A lot of what I'm going to teach you in Project SmartSprout and beyond that is the stuff that I learned the hard way. And one of the reasons that I started SmartSprout and one of the reasons that I do what I do is because I do not want you to have to figure this out the hard way. I want to shortcut this process for you because it matters to me that you're successful so you can raise the money you need, help the people or the animals you're here to help, and make a difference in the world. So this is real. This is not me just, oh, I'm just going to make up something here, which I do make up stuff occasionally, but it's usually like, oh, here's a different way to think about this. This is real stuff. These are the exact steps that I go through when I'm writing a fundraising plan for somebody. If I were on a board or a volunteer for an organization, this is what I would go through myself. So I just want you to know that this is all based in reality. Here are the steps. Number 1, you got to learn from the past. We're going to talk about how to evaluate your past fundraising activities so you know which ones to bring forward and why. In step 2, we're going to shine a guiding beacon. I'm going to show you here a technique that you can use to make your fundraising plan very focused and help you be very efficient with your time. Then we're going to set 3 critical targets. One of these you're going to go, duh, and the other 2 you're going to go, and I can't wait to show you what those are. In step 4, we're going to put on your super cape. In other words, we're going to talk about how to play to your strengths so that you're not doing the same fundraising that the organization down the road is doing, but you're doing the ones that play to your strengths and make sense for you. In step 5, this is the fun part. This is where you start choosing the right strategies for you and for your nonprofit. And then in step 6, we're going to write it all down because if it's not in writing, it's not real. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Step number 1, learn from the past. There are a lot of people who do a lot of fundraising events and activities, fundraisers, just because they did it last year. And I think that's the most terrible reason to do anything. I've had a lot of people say, oh, yeah, we do this event every year. Okay. What's your return on investment for that event? What do you mean return on investment? So I end up having this conversation with people and they can't tell me a reason why they do this event other than they always have. That's not a good enough reason. Never do an event, a fundraising, anything just because you've done it in the past. Do it because it works for you. So what we have to do is do a little analysis. You've got a page in the handouts that will help you with that. If you start thinking about all of your fundraising in specific categories like events or grants or appeals or monthly giving, if you can lump things into categories, you can go back into last year and even the past couple of years to see how have those performed. Have they been successful? How much money did you raise? Gross? What did those cost you? So what was your net? I want you to start looking at the numbers. Making decisions based on numbers is much better than making decisions based on emotion. When you're bringing something forward just because you like the event or because you think you're supposed to do it because you always have, that's not a very good reason. So what I want you to do, if you have the handout, use that page. If you don't have the handout, here's an easy thing to do. Make a list of everything you've done in the last 12 months to raise money, and then look at each item and ask yourself these 3 questions. Did we get enough ROI? Well, what is ROI? That means return on investment. What that means, for those of you not familiar with that term, that means if you spent $1,000 on that fundraiser, what was your return for investing that 1,000? Did you make 1,500 or 5,000 or 500? What was your return on the investment of that money? Now, ROI is a little tricky because in the world of fundraising, you also have to look at time. Typically, we don't include our time, in the expense column of an event or a fundraiser. We should, especially if you have paid staff and you're paying them to be there, you got to include that. So you want to ask yourself about ROI. Now, this question says, did we get enough ROI? I want you to decide how much ROI you want to get off of each fundraiser. So for example, if you're having an event, let's say you have a dinner or a gala, a party, something like that, and you spend, let's say, $10,000 on this event. How much do you need to make off of that event in order to feel like it was really worth it? If you spend $10,000 and you make $11,000, probably not worth it. If you spend $10,000, make $100,000, that's 10 times your investment. That's pretty good. I'll take 10 times the investment any day. What I'm normally looking for is about 3 or 4 times on an event. If I spend 10,000, I want to make at least 30 or 40. And frankly, I'm going to be trying to figure out how to push it up closer to 50 or 60 or more. You want to think about what kind of ROI you want from your activities, and then go measure and see, what did you get? What did you get? Now, here's where a lot of people go, well, but listen, anytime somebody says, well, I know that what's coming next is justification. We're trying to justify it because we liked it. The next question you want to ask yourself is, can we improve it? Is there a way to do this better? So if we did this event last year, we spent 10,000, we made 30. Is there something that we can do to make it better so we can bump it to 40 or 50? And if you've heard me tell the story about the Horsehaven Dancing for the Horses event, you know that we bumped that one from 16,000 to 55,000 to 93,000 to 117,000. We grew that event $100,000 in 3 years. You know why? Because we asked that question. How can we improve this event? And we found 2 key ways to improve it, and we did. We ran with it. The other thing you want to ask about each of those fundraising activities is, has it run its course? Because it may have. It might be time to put it to bed. And I've done that before. I've had events that I said, you know what, we're spending 6 months planning this event. We're barely making $2,000. This is not worth it. If we factored in the staff time, we're losing money on this event. And then I've argued with board members before when they say, oh, but this is a great audience for this event. Well, that may be, but if we can't monetize it, if we can't get enough return on the investment of money and time and energy that we're putting into it, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If you have somebody that's saying, oh, but it's such a good audience, or oh, it's such a good whatever, you're basically counting on future hope. Like it's future hope is what it is. You're hoping that some point in the future that it's going to pay off for you. Not really a great strategy. So look at everything you've done. Did we get enough ROI? Can we improve it? Has it run its course? In other words, let's make this really simple. As you look at things, you look at the numbers, you ask yourself, what are we going to keep? Is this activity a keeper? Can we keep it, but it needs to be tweaked? In other words, it's not terrible, but it's got some room for improvement. We can tweak it, make it better. Or is this something that just needs to be dumped? Has it run its course? Time to let this fundraiser go. We're going to do something else that's going to be better. My favorite is the tweak. I love looking at activities and trying to figure out, what can we add to this to make it better? How can we add value? How can we get a bigger audience? How can we get more sponsors? To me, that is just a lot of fun to figure out the tweaking. But this is what you want to do. You want to look at the things you've done in the last year, ask yourself, based on the numbers, not on how you feel about it, what do we keep, what do we tweak, and what do we dump? If you do that, that's going to get you started off well. For those of you who have brand new organizations, you haven't really done anything yet, that's okay. I want you to know that this is the process you're going to walk through this time next year. All right. Oh, I mentioned this earlier. Never do something just because you always have. Do it because it works. Let's go to step 2. Shine a guiding beacon. All right, this is amazing. I wish I could just shout from the rooftops about this technique because I wish more people would do this. To explain what I'm talking about here, I want to show you this picture. Now, if you can see the slides, I've got a picture of a lighthouse. You all know what a lighthouse is for, right? It's meant to shine a big bright light out into the waters, into the dark night, to alert ships of rocky shores and shallow waters so that they don't get stranded or wrecked or get stuck or whatever. You need the same kind of thing. You need a lighthouse. You need a shining beacon to keep your fundraising on track because it is so easy to get distracted, especially these days when there's every 5 minutes, there's a new social media platform, there's a new tool, there's a new technique, there's a new something. Now, maybe it's not every 5 minutes, but it feels that way some days. You need to do things because they're going to work for you, not because it's the latest, greatest thing. And one of the easiest ways I know to keep you focused and on track is to create something that I call an impact goal. So an impact goal, simply put, is a description of the impact that your nonprofit is going to have this year. So, Joanne, I'm going to pick on you because you were first one here today. Joanne's organization provides training for first responders. So the impact might be we want to double the number of participants who come through our training. Double is something that we can measure. We know exactly. I mean, she could go look and see how many people does she have right now. What would double that be? And she probably knows that the more first responders she can get through this training, the safer communities are, the safer people are in their homes and at work and at play. And this is a good thing all the way around. Everybody needs to figure out what your impact goal is. It's usually something measurable, and it's something that people can get really excited about. So here's a couple of other examples. We have a lot of animal welfare groups in SmartSprout, so I used an animal example. And again, it might just be, we're going to double the number of animals we save. For some of you, it might be simply to eliminate a waiting list. We don't want anybody waiting for service from our organization. It might be to reduce. We want to reduce the number of people who depend on us by 10%. It might be an increase. We want to increase the number of emergency food bags that we're distributing by 25%. As long as it is something that is measurable and it is something that directly relates to the direct impact your organization has, you can express it as an impact goal. Now, why is this so helpful? Number one, this is something that your community can probably understand. So if we say we want to double the number of animals we save this year, people are going to go, oh, okay. How many are we saving now? And what does that mean? And you can start to put it in context. So that's one thing. The other thing is it's going to really guide your fundraising plan. If your goal is to double the number of first responders who come through your training or double the number of animals you save, then you're going to make sure that everything that you put in your fundraising plan is supporting that. Now, you already know you don't have unlimited time. You have a specific amount of time that you can spend on fundraising. So that means you can't do things that only generate nickels and dimes because you don't have time for that. You can't afford to do an activity that's only going to generate $200 because what you really need is to do something that's going to generate $2,000 or $20,000 or $200,000. You need things of a much higher nature in order to get you where you're going to go. So if you have your impact goal handy, then as we walk through the rest of this fundraising plan training, and as you're working through, you're actually working your fundraising plan, every day you can ask yourself about the things on your to-do list. You can ask yourself about the activities in your fundraising plan. You can ask yourself about anything that you're thinking about doing. Will this help us move toward our goal of doubling the number of animals that we save or doubling the number of first responders that we train, is this going to help us reach our impact goal? And to me, that's awesome, because you can literally use it with your to-do list and say, will this committee meeting help double the number of animals that we save this year? If the answer is no, then don't go. You don't need to be on that committee. If the answer is, oh my gosh, yes, this is going to be amazing. This is a lunch meeting with the president of the bank who happens to love animals, and I think he's probably going to be interested in making a large donation to our fundraiser. It's probably a good use of your time. That's hard. I think really looking at where you should spend your time day to day can be very difficult. So the impact goal can help you weed out those things that are not a great use of your time. And if you're like a lot of folks who work in nonprofits, saying no is not easy. We're not used to it. We're not good at it. We tend to say yes to everything, and then we have too much on our plate and we get really overwhelmed. So when we can say no to things that are not going to move us toward that impact goal, we're actually doing ourselves a favor. So hopefully that's making sense to you. That's a really important piece of fundraising, because it's also going to be helpful in your messaging. When you start talking to people about why you're raising money, it's not so you can reach your $10,000 goal. It's so you can double the number of animals you're saving. You see, people don't care about your internal goals. They really don't. They care about what you're doing to make a difference. So when you can express your goal in terms of the impact you're trying to have, it's going to be easier for people to jump on board with that. All right, step 3, you're going to set 3 critical targets. So your fundraising plan needs to address all 3 of these targets. The first one is the number of dollars to raise. I told you were going to go duh at this one. But here's the deal. You need to be very clear, down to the penny, about the exact amount that you need to raise and that your fundraising plan needs to support. If you don't know, you have a big problem. Now, I worked one time with an organization that had a budget of $11 million and something, which that's a pretty good size budget in the world of Get Fully Funded. We tend to work with a lot of really small organizations. And I said to the executive director, I said, all right, so what's the fundraising goal for this coming year? And he goes, well, more than last year. And I looked at him like, you've got to be kidding me. What is that? Like $1 more, $1 million more? What are we talking about here? If you don't know exactly how much money you need to raise, it's tough to do the happy dance. You don't know when you're finished. You don't know when you're done. So make sure you know exactly how much money you need to raise. Now, the next 2 goals are going to support, the next 2 targets are actually going to support that one as well. You probably don't think much about this. Number 2 is the number of donors you want to renew. Now, in Project SmartSprout, we teach you about donor-based fundraising. In other words, you need to build that big loyal donor base in order to generate the kind of revenue that you need in an ongoing fashion. If you're not paying attention to donor renewal, you are going to lose donors right and left. Across the board, donor retention is awful right now. It's about 47%. Now, what that means is if you start the year with 100 donors, you're going to end the year with 47. Where are the others going? Well, the other, let's see, that would be 53, I think. The other 53 are mostly just drifting away because they don't feel like their donation makes a difference. They feel like they're peeing in the ocean. It doesn't matter. So you have to pay attention to the number of donors you want to renew. If you're not sure what to shoot for, just shoot for 50%. If you know what your retention rate is, awesome, bump it up 1% or 2. Try to go for something higher. If you don't know, just shoot for renewing 50% of your donors. If you're using a tool like Kindful or Little Green Light, they'll calculate your retention rate for you, which is really nice. All right, so if you're paying attention to your donor base, if you're trying to make sure you've got as big of a donor base as possible, then renewing donors makes a lot of sense. And what goes right along with renewing donors is acquiring new donors. Joanne just said she lost the audio. Hopefully that will come back, Joanne. Let me know if it doesn't. Of course, she probably didn't hear me say that. Somebody else is saying they can hear just fine. Okay, so it might be on Joanne's end. Okay, critical target number 1, specific number of dollars to raise. Critical target number 2, the number of donors to renew. Critical target number 3, the number of donors you need to acquire. If you know right now you're going to lose 53% of your donors, you better be bringing in new ones just to break even. And if you want to grow your donor base, then you have to be bringing in lots and lots and lots of new donors. So what this means is in your fundraising plan, you want to make sure that you have some activities in there that are going to lend themselves very well to bringing in new donors. And you want to have some activities that are going to lend themselves very well to renewing donors. So things like having a big, fun, gala type fundraiser can be a renewal opportunity for donors. It can also be a renewal opportunity for sponsors. It can be an acquisition opportunity to get new donors. Things like Giving Tuesday. I've used Giving Tuesday very successfully many times to renew donors and bring in new ones. So as you're putting your plan together, just keep these things in mind, that you want to have very specific numbers here on all three of these targets. If you do this, then you're going to be way more likely to hit your goals. All right, let's go to step 4. Put on your super cape. Dun, ta-da! Here's where we're going to play to your strengths. Because if you're trying to do stuff you're not good at, it's going to suck. You're going to hate it. You're going to be miserable, and you're not going to do a good job. What you want to do is get really clear about the things that you're good at and do more of them. So if you're good at public speaking, then you need to be out talking to the Rotary Club and going around to some church groups and being out everywhere you can. If you're really good at writing, you need to be writing. You need to be doing blog posts and writing social media and writing the newsletter and writing appeals. It's pretty easy to raise money with all those things. I have done it. If you're really, really good with people, then you need to be face-to-face with folks, talking to them about what your organization is doing to make a difference and how they can get involved with you. I love this cartoon, by the way. If you can see the slides, a funny little cartoon. A friend of mine has a very, very talented teenage son, and he drew this. This is me and my dog, Maggie. I think it's pretty cute. So you have to know what your personal strengths are. There is a video on my YouTube channel called Unique Brilliance. If you get about 10 minutes or so, go look on getfullyfundedtv.com. Search for Unique Brilliance. You'll find this video. It walks you through an exercise of uncovering what your personal strengths are and what you're really not good at. And the point is, don't try to improve on your weaknesses, because you never will. You'll never do enough to get it where it needs to be. Instead, work on getting better at the stuff you're already good at. If you're already a good writer, imagine how much more you could do if you were a great writer. So get really clear about what you're personally very good at. The next thing I want you to think about is organizational assets. I'm pretty sure there's a page in your handouts that talks about assets. Your organizational assets are things that your organization has going for it that are going to make fundraising easier. Things like name recognition, strong brand. So if you have an organization that's, I think we have a Sprouty member who is with a Habitat for Humanity affiliate. Habitat has great name recognition and a very strong brand. Those are things you can leverage. If your organization is really new, you probably don't have much name recognition. You don't have a strong brand yet. You're still working on all that stuff. So what do you have? Do you have well-known leaders? Do you have a broad-reaching or well-loved cause? If you're saving animals, you better believe there's a lot of people out there that think that's a good idea. Maybe you have a great facility or a location where you can give a great tour. I kind of fell into that one at the food bank. I did 2 or 3 tours, mostly because we were a United Way agency, and United Way would just call and say, hey, we've got some folks that want to come for a tour. Do you mind? And we're like, sure, that's fine. And I noticed that every tour I gave, people had the same reaction. They all looked around and said, almost to the person, they would say, I had no idea. I had no idea that it was this size, that you worked on this scope, that there were so many people. I had no idea. And I was like, okay, this is good, because at the end of that tour, not only were they saying I had no idea, but they said, how can I help? I want to get involved. How can I help? And I figured out really fast that bringing people in for a tour was a really, really good way to not only show them what we were doing, but to engage them and to get new donors out of it. So every time United Way called, I said, yes, I'll take as many tours as you want to send my way. And then we started just opening up for a tour once a month or so to our list. We would publicize it in the community and people would come in. It was great. I've got a client that does that. She does a tour that she has a horse rescue and she does sort of an open barn / tour one Saturday a month. And she gets new donors and raises a little money and gets new volunteers every time. And it's a real nice win for her. A big donor base, that's definitely an organizational asset. If you already have an awful lot of people who are supporting your cause, then you want to make sure you're leveraging that. Or if you have a really large or dedicated volunteer base, that can be amazing as well. I've worked with organizations that have hundreds of volunteers, and when I ask them when the last time was that they asked their volunteers for money, they say, "What?" They assume that because people are giving their time, they won't want to give their money. And I say, oh, no, no, no. Your volunteers might be exactly the people who would love to give because they see inside the organization. They know the good work you're doing, and they know exactly where they want to give. So I think the trick to getting volunteers to give is to give them a choice about where their money can be used. They may want to give to something that's very specific to what they're volunteering for, and that's fine. Let them do that. Once you figure out your organizational assets, you can start to use those. Just like I mentioned, if you're good with people and you have a great facility, then you should be doing tours. If you're really good at speaking, you don't have any facility, you probably better go out and do the Rotary Club circuit. You need to go out and do as many speaking gigs as you can. So when you start to make a list of what your organization has going for it, what you have going for it, start thinking about what things are going to take advantage of both of those, at least one of them, but both of those. That would be amazing. Those are things that you want to include in your plan. Now, step 5 is about choosing the right strategies. And what we have here, we're going to kind of mash everything up that we've talked about, from looking at what you've done in the past to your impact goal to those 3 critical targets to playing to your strengths. We're going to start to mash it all up so that you can choose the right strategies. Because again, you don't want to do something that the organization down the street does. You don't want to copy them. You want to do what's working or what will work for you. And that may require you to think about it a little bit. Now, when I work with organizations to help them put their fundraising plan together, I normally can figure out pretty fast what they should be doing and what they may not want to leverage at all. Sometimes I can pick because of the cause, because of what the organization does, and I'm like, yeah, this is going to work for you. This will work really well for you. Or that thing, it might or it might not, just depending on how you launch it. And let me tell you, I have seen just about everything work really, really well and also be a total flop. So in other words, I've seen events like let's say a golf tournament. I've seen a golf tournament be very mediocre for a lot of organizations. I can tell you about a dog rescue in Florida that does a golf tournament and they raise $500,000. And I can tell you about organizations that have tried golf tournaments and it was a complete flop. So it doesn't really matter what specific thing it is. And a lot of people reach out to me and they say, I just need a good idea. No, you don't need an idea. You need a strategy. You need a plan for executing on the idea. See, there's a ton of ideas out there. You don't need an idea. You need a strategy. And you need commitment to follow that strategy all the way through. Now, let me give you a couple of tips on choosing strategies. Are there right or wrong strategies? No, but there might be right strategies or better strategies for you, and there might be strategies that are not going to really work for you for whatever reason. So I'm really hesitant to say a lot of times, like, everybody should be doing this, everybody should be doing that. The minute that I say everybody should be going after grants, then I run across an organization that I say, maybe not. Like, I literally emailed with a client yesterday and said, I don't think grants are a good use of your time. They're probably not. This guy has been in my programs for probably 5 years or so, and his organization is so cash flush. We were talking about a capital campaign. He says, I don't really even need to do that because I have the money in the bank right now to write this check for, it's a ridiculous amount of money. He's just doing really, really well. He's been good at telling his story and getting people involved. And now they're raising so much money that I said, I don't really think that I don't think that grants is going to be a good use of your time. Number one, because if you're sitting on a six-figure surplus, nobody's going to want to give you a $10,000 grant. And I think you can spend the same amount of time and cultivate some individual donors and raise even more than you would get with the grants. I know it's crazy, right? It's very exciting. And you can be there too. Like when he first started working with us, he didn't think he was ever going to be in that space. And yet here he is, very fully funded and then some, and not really working too hard to raise money, but the money just keeps pouring in because they're doing the right thing. They're telling their story, they're cultivating their donors, they're making people feel good, they're giving them a good experience, and people want to keep giving. It's just how it works. So, right strategies for you? Yes, there probably are some. I'm going to give you some hints, but you're going to have to figure out what the right strategies are for your fundraising plan. And if you tune into it a little bit, you'll just know. You'll know what you need to be doing and what's not a good idea for you. And then the thing is, if you're not really sure, give it your best guess. Go test it out. If it works or it works okay and you can see some tweaks, then you're probably on the right track. If it's a total flop, then you want to ask yourself, what could we have done better? Is there something we could have done better? And if there's not anything you could have done better, then that was not a good strategy for you. I recommend you keep everything donor focused because remember, it is all about the donors. If you know that story of the goose and the golden egg, you know that the goose is only going to continue to give golden eggs as long as the goose is healthy and being fed regularly. If you neglect or kill the goose, the golden eggs stop coming. Your donors are the same way. If you take really, really good care of your donors, they're going to keep giving because they're going to fall in love with your organization. And that's really what we're looking for. Taking care of your donors is really pretty simple. It's about keeping them in the loop. That's where your newsletter is so important. If your newsletter is done well, it can be an amazing tool for feeding the goose that lays the golden egg. If your newsletter is boring, or if it's inwardly focused instead of being donor focused, it's not going to work. So it's not that hard to do, but you do have to include those things in your fundraising plan. That's why there's a column. If you look on over in your handouts, there's I'm sorry, I don't remember on page number right off the top of my head, but it's a summary calendar. And on the summary calendar, there is a place for newsletters and communications internally so that you're being very purposeful about how you're staying in touch with donors. Newsletters is one part of it, but there's others. I've got clients who are sending out mid-year postcard updates and doing real well with that. So they're physically sending a postcard through the mail and putting on that postcard an infographic of what's been happening with the organization up to that point. And donors love it because it just gives them a real quick snapshot of what's going on at the nonprofit and that the organization is being successful. And see, I think this is key. I think when people give you money, they want to know they made a good decision. And when you show them something that indicates that you are being successful, they like that because then they feel good that they made the right decision. None of us want to look stupid. We don't want to give money to an organization that then turn around 3 months later and folds, or there's some scandal in the news or something. Like none of us want that. That mid-year update can give people an idea of what you're doing. An annual report. Gosh, there's probably 3 or 4 other ideas of things that you could try that would give people just an idea of what's happening. All right, so let's start looking at strategies. Now, as we go into that, I want to talk about a couple of different tools that are going to be super helpful. One is, you need to know this, there are 2 types of fundraising. There's something called transactional fundraising, and then there's transformational fundraising. To explain this, I want to talk about Girl Scout cookies. Now, you've probably eaten Girl Scout cookies, or you at least know what they are, right? Girl Scouts is a great organization, been around a really long time. I was a Girl Scout mom. My girls were in Scouts, and I was the troop leader and the cookie mom, so I've spent a lot of time sitting out in front of Kroger selling cookies. Now, here's the problem. People come up to the booth to buy the cookies because they love Thin Mints. Yeah, they might think favorably of the girls, but it's not really about the girls, it's about the cookies. They give us money, we hand them a box of cookies, they go on their merry way, we may never see them again. It was a transaction. And that's what transactional fundraising is. It's when people give you money, they get something in return, and really what they're interested in is the thing that they just got. So there's a lot of kinds of fundraising that falls into the transactional category, things like golf tournaments. People don't play in a golf tournament because they love your organization. They play in golf tournaments because they want to get out of work for the day and come drive around in the golf cart and drink beer and have fun. 5Ks, walks, anything you're selling, candles, candies, candy bars, calendars, all those things that start with a C, that's all transactional. Now, there's nothing wrong with transactional fundraising, but if all of your fundraising is transactional, that's a huge problem. So you don't want to have your whole year's worth of fundraising being, hey, buy a ticket to our gala. Hey, we're doing this raffle. Now we have an online auction. Now we're selling calendars. If all of your fundraising is transactional, you are going to struggle every year. Now, what's easier, I think, is transformational fundraising. That's where people give you money because they love the work that your organization is doing, and they want to see you do more of it. They give because they care, and they want to see a transformation in the life of someone that you're helping. Transformational fundraising is like Giving Tuesday, and they're not getting anything in return, or a direct appeal, or a major gift, or a monthly gift, or a planned gift. And people are just giving you money because they care. And usually transformational giving is way more productive. It usually brings in much more money than transactional. So what you want to do here is have more transformational giving than transactional. The easiest thing to do is to make a list. There's a sheet in your handout. There's a one page that lists out different kinds of fundraising and if it's transactional or transformational. And then there's a worksheet where you can literally list out everything that you're doing in and put it in the right category. Is it transactional or is it transformational? Put it in the category and then have a look at it. And then you can tell real fast if you're doing too many transactional fundraisers. Remember, you want to have more transformational fundraising than transactional so that you're focused in the right direction. Okay, the next thing I want to show you is the 1-10-1000 rule. I mean, if you're not sure about what you should be doing in fundraising, this is going to help a lot. All right, 1-10-1000 starts with one signature event. Do one fundraising event during the year, do it really well, hit it out of the park, put everything you got into it, and then move on. Do not, I repeat, do not do small event after small event after small event. Events are not very productive in terms of return on investment. They're a lot of work. An event like the one in the picture here, that takes a good 9 months to plan, more like 10 or 11 months to really do it well. It takes a lot of manpower to pull it off, and most nonprofits do not put the right kind of committee and sponsors and support in place in order for their event to be as big as it can be. So this is literally a picture from the Horsehaven event I mentioned a minute ago, Dancing for the Horses, that went from 16,000 to 55,000 to 93,000 to 117 in just 3 years, which was just crazy. What makes an event a signature event? Everybody in town knows that that's your event. Typically, the event is in alignment with whatever your mission is. So when I was at the food bank, we did this event that was literally a sit-down dinner for 1,000 people. It was just crazy. The really funny thing was the event was called without reservations. But you did have to make a reservation, but it wasn't really a reservation. So you bought a ticket and you came to the convention center, and there were 20 restaurants catering dinner, and you didn't know which one of the 20 you were going to be served at until you got there. It was just kind of fun. People loved that event. It was so much work, but it was a fun food event benefiting a food bank, and that's part of what made it a signature event. The other part of what makes it a signature event is just how much awareness you can get. Like if everybody in town knows that that's your event, it's on its way to being a signature event. So with your event, you have to have a committee. Have a really good planning committee that can make all the difference in the world. You have to have good sponsors. Corporate sponsors are where you're going to make most of your money on a big fundraising event like this. I like the event to have a lot of emotion. It either has to be a fun event like this one, or it has to be the kind of event that really tugs the heartstrings. And I've done both of those and had good success with both. You kick off your fundraising year, or you start your fundraising plan with one event, and that's it. Now, I'm not talking about volunteer recruitment events. That's different. For those of you in animal welfare, adoption events, that's different. Donor appreciation events, that's different. We're talking up here about events that are specifically meant to raise money. Do one, do it really well, make it a signature event, and then move on because you got other stuff you need to do, like working on grants. Now, we say here 10 grants. Can you get exactly 10 grants? I don't know, maybe, maybe not. The point here is keep your grant pipeline full. You need to know what grants you can apply for. What are you eligible for? Make yourself a deadline calendar so that you know what's coming up and when, because the worst thing is when a grant deadline sneaks up on you. It's Thursday, your grant is due Friday at 5 o'clock, and you just found out about it. It can be done, but it's very stressful, and I don't recommend it because you're not going to do your best work at the last minute. You can go spend a little time with the Foundation Center searchable database. You can either find it online or you can probably find it at your local library, especially if you're in a big city. Go do the research to find out what foundations want to give money to organizations like yours, and they're out there. I'm amazed at the grants that we can find for people. We have a grant writer on staff, and she normally can find somewhere around 10 really hot leads for an organization. Sometimes we find way more, sometimes she finds less. But the point here is keep your grant pipeline full, because grants can be a great source of revenue for projects, equipment. Sometimes you can get money for capacity building and salaries and things like that. But I like them very much for equipment and projects, and sometimes for expansion. All right, so one signature event, 10 grants, and then build your donor base up to 1,000 donors. Now, before anybody has a heart attack, it can be done. If you already have 1,000 donors, add another 1,000. If you have 100 or less, add another 100. Actually, if you have anything less than 1,000, just take it 100 at a time. Add 100 donors. When you get those, add another 100. Keep going until you get to 1,000. Why? Because the game's going to change when you have 1,000 people dropping a donation off to you at least once a year. It will change the game. Because think about it. If you have 1,000 donors and you lose one, you still have 999 more. Plus, you probably know how to go get a new one to replace the one that you lost. 1,000 donors will give you a lot of sustainability and predictability in your funding. Now, here's some fundraising math. I know I warned you, right? We're going to do math today. Let's say that you have a signature event that's generating 25,000. And yes, that is doable, even if you're just getting started. It's all about putting a committee in place and getting the sponsors. You can do it. 10 grants at 2,500 each. Well, maybe you can't get 10. Maybe you get 5 grants at 5,000 each. That's still going to give you 25,000. 25,000 in grants is not out of the realm of possibility for a lot of organizations. Then if you have 1,000 donors giving you $50 each, that's one $50 gift during the year, or maybe two $25 gifts. Look how that adds up. Now, the nice thing about this is you can scale it. So let's say you already have a signature event and you do $50,000 there. Well, then that means you have more coming in for the bottom line. That makes you less reliant on grants, which is a good thing. What if you have a monthly giving program that you can add to this? I have a client that has a really young organization, and their monthly giving generates $35,000 a year. That's a really nice line to add to this math. It takes some of the reliance off of other things. She's right now building a signature event that we think is probably going to do about $75,000 this year. And she's got a few grants coming in, but she's got that really strong monthly giving line item there. And so her number is much higher than 100,000. It's very exciting. So will your budget be exactly this? Probably not, but I wanted you to see this just so you could see what's possible. And you could start thinking about what yours is going to look like and start to play with it a little bit. Because you got to know where the money's going to come from. You can't just say, well, we'll go raise as much money as we can, and then we'll come back and figure out how to spend it. That's backwards. You want to know going into it how much money you need to raise so that you can fund your programs. That means you have to know what the program delivery is going to look like this year and how much it's going to cost. And then you can do this exercise and figure out where the money is going to come from, and then you know what you need to be working on. You see how that works? This all comes together. There's no reason for anybody to be shooting from the hip or guessing or throwing spaghetti at the wall to try to figure out how to bring money in. You should be able to back into it with this kind of strategy to figure out exactly what you need to do. Now, once you get your strategies all figured out, it is time to write it down. Because if it's not in writing, it's not real. Now, the question that I get asked a lot is, what is the right format for a fundraising plan? And the answer is, there is not a, quote, right format. It depends on what you like. I have done fundraising plans in Word, and what you see here on the screen is actually screenshots of the template that I use when I'm writing a fundraising plan for somebody. It's about 15 pages usually. I start with a summary page, and then I go into a lot of detail on each activity that I'm going to include in the plan. You can also do some things in Excel. The sheet you see on the screen there, it's actually a screenshot from Excel from the last year I was at the food bank, and I had a list of line items because it made it easier for passing on my projections to our finance guy who's doing budgeting. But I would have line items like general public contributions and newsletter contributions and lapsed donor appeals and direct mail, major donors, monthly giving, like all that kind of stuff. And I would project for each month how much I thought was coming in that month based on what my numbers were last year and what I had in my fundraising plan. So at that time, this was what I used. Like I had some notes around some other stuff. Like I had a page of notes about the mailings that I was going to do, when I was doing them, who I was mailing to, and exactly what I thought the cost and revenue breakdown was going to be. But this largely guided me at that point through what I was going to do. I knew where the money was going to come from. And really the fun part was I put this sheet together and then I would just hand it to our finance guy. And these numbers went right straight into the budget, which was fun. All right, so this is nerdy, but the absolute most fun part for me was I would put my fundraising budget together and the operations manager would put the operations side together, and then we would sit down and compare them and see how far off are we. And it was really fun because on a budget of like 1.2 million, 1.3 million, we might be about $10,000 off. And I'd be like, yes, don't worry about it. I'll go figure out where I'm going to raise 10,000 more. I got you covered. We're doing it. All the stuff you want to do this year, I got it covered. And that was so much fun. That was a fully funded budget. That all the expansion he wanted to do, new people he wanted to hire, we needed a new forklift, we needed a new truck, whatever, no problem, I got it. I'll find that money for you. That was fun. And that's where I want you to be able to get to, is having a plan that keeps you focused and moving forward, and you know exactly how you're going to be bringing in all the money that you need. It is such a thrill. It's so much fun. And like I said, I want that for everybody. All right, so that's step 6, get it in writing. Listen, if you don't have anything else, you need this, the one-page fundraising plan. That's that summary calendar that's in your handouts. If you don't do anything else, do this, because just getting it all on one page is going to help you so much, just to be able to see at a glance what is coming up next, what grants are due, when is the event happening, how about what are you doing for individual donors, and when are people on vacation? It'll help you a lot. So if you don't do anything else, fill out the summary calendar, print it out, put it somewhere where you will see it every day. It'll keep you on track. All right, what have you learned today? Have you got some big takeaways? This is a good one. This is one of my favorite webinars. One of my favorite trainings, period, because I think there's a lot of people who shoot from the hip. They're not really focused when it comes to having a plan. And I think if you follow these steps, you're very, what's the word I want to use here? You're very purposeful about what you decide to do to raise money. And there's some specific reasons why you do what you do. You have specific results that you're looking for from everything that you do. You will be way more successful than if you're just, well, we did this event last year, we'll do it again. That doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So I want you to be very purposeful. I want you to think. I want you to know for everything that you do, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to raise, or what is your goal for every activity you do that counts as fundraising? If you don't know why you're doing it or what your goal is, you shouldn't be doing it. It's not worth it if you don't know why you're doing it. So what I'd like you to do is go back through your notes and find one thing that you can do to get started on a written fundraising plan. Now, Joanne says she's going to get very serious about ROI and the time that is spent. I think that will be incredibly helpful for you. I think for everybody, if you really look at where you're spending your time, the time you're spending on fundraising, well, really all your time, but particularly fundraising time, if you're spending it on things that don't generate much in terms of ROI, you're going to be frustrated. I just tell you that right now. As always, I want you to go back through your notes, find one thing that you can get started on in the next week, put it on your calendar, and then take action. If you don't do something with this, then it was just a good webinar. And I don't want it to be just a good webinar for you. I want it to be like, whoa, look what I did. I put this in place and here's how much we raised. That's when you're going to be like my client, Chris, that I was telling you about earlier, who has a fully funded budget and doesn't need to do grants because he has so much money. Yeah, Chris takes action. He says, I saw him at a conference last week and he literally said, all I do is the stuff you told me to do. And this is what happened. And I'm like, well, great. I love that. I love that you've gotten to that point of being fully funded and doing that so easily. All right, here's what's coming up next. For those of you who are coming to the Inspired Fundraising Retreat, that is next week. It is August 9th and 10th. I should have put that on the list here. If you're joining in by live stream, you'll see me. I won't see you, but I will be saying hello to you. On the next Thursday, on Thursday, August 15th, we'll have a session that Leah and I will be teaching together called Budgets for Small Growing Nonprofits. So if you're not a numbers person, I would recommend that you join us for that one. Leah is really, really good at breaking this down and making it really simple to understand. I know when you don't have a strong budget that you're going to run into a lot of problems. We have had clients. We've had clients with who have about $1 million coming in and out of their organization who do not have a strong budget. So we're going to show you how to put a budget together, what goes on the revenue side, what goes on the expense side, things you need to be thinking about. So plan on joining us for that. That's August 15th at 3 p.m. And that is it for today, my friends. We're right at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for being here and being part of the webinar. If you want to come to the Inspired Fundraising Retreat, I think we have about a dozen tickets left. There's not many. If you want to join by live stream, we have plenty of those. You can go to inspiredfundraisingretreat.com and grab a ticket. We would love for you to be part of that. You do get a discount because you're a Project SmartSprout member, and I believe the code is the word inspired. I believe that will save you, I think, about $100. I'm getting a nod from Kristen, so that is the right, that's the right info. Use the word inspired to save $100 if you haven't done that already. And I hope to see you there. If you got questions, you can ask them in the Facebook group at any time. And until next time, happy fundraising, you guys. See you later. Bye.